Yeah, so we've got a whole bunch of stuff here that I was just going to kind of read that kind of
Perfect.
just summarizes and goes over the
hmm
whole thing. Um, so the divorce and the prenup, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love's prenuptial agreement, the existence, terms, and posthumous challenges. The existence and signing of the prenuptial agreement in 1992. Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love did sign a prenuptial agreement shortly before their wedding on February 24th, 1992. Multiple sources confirm that Cobain insisted on a prenup as a condition of marriage. According to Cobain's biographer, Charles R. Cross, the idea was encouraged by Nirvana's management. Cobain had suggested a prenup after strong lobbying from manager John Silva, who never liked Courtney. End quote. At the time, both musicians had relatively modest means. Cobain's Nevermind royalties had not fully come in yet, and Love was negotiating a record deal. So the prenup was intended to protect future earnings as their fortunes grew. Notably, Courtney Love herself has claimed the prenuptial agreement was partly her idea, indicating both parties were aware of the financial implications of their union. The document was finalized just in time for their Hawaii wedding, which had been delayed slightly until the prenup could be completed. The known terms of the Cobain and Love prenup. The prenuptial agreement's terms were reportedly straightforward. It kept each spouse's assets separate and limited financial claims in the event of a divorce. In other words, neither Cobain nor Love would profit from the other's estate if they split up, beyond any specified settlement. According to journalists Ian Halperin and Max Wallace, who investigated Cobain's death, Courtney had, quote, signed a prenuptial agreement that would keep their respective fortunes separate in the event of a divorce, end quote. This meant that if Cobain and Love divorced, Love would not be entitled to Cobain's fortune from Nirvana's success, nor Cobain to Love's assets. In fact, Cobain's attorney and friend Rosemary Carroll later revealed that under a prenup, quote, if the divorce had gone through, Courtney would have received a very small settlement, end quote, from Cobain's wealth. In essence, Love was, quote, not set to gain any of her husband's millions, end quote, should the marriage end in divorce. These provisions were put in place because, as Love quipped, at the time of marriage, they were both still, quote, fuck poor, end quote, and anticipated their real earnings were yet to come. It's important to note that the prenup primarily addresses divorce. It did not explicitly allocate assets in the event of death, which, unless such clauses were standard, for example, waiving a spousal inheritance share, which is unclear from public sources. The agreement's intent was to protect Cobain's assets, present and future, during the marriage and especially in a potential divorce scenario. Cobain's death and legal challenges to the prenup. So this is 1994 to 1995. On April 8, 1994, Kurt Cobain was found dead, and it was soon known that he died without a will. This immediately raised questions about the distribution of his estate, including substantial royalties and rights to Nirvana's music. Under Washington state law, and absent a will, Cobain's heirs would normally be his surviving spouse, Courtney, and his child, 1.5-year-old Frances Bean Cobain. However, the existence of a prenuptial agreement complicated matters. If the prenup's terms were enforced after Cobain's death, Love may have waived certain inheritance rights, potentially giving a larger share of the estate to Cobain's daughter, Frances, or to a trust on her behalf. Indeed, Nirvana's surviving bandmates later asserted that, quote, Cobain's estate, including his interest in Nirvana, should have been distributed to his only child after his death, end quote, implying that the prenup or intestate law would have favored the intestate is dying without a will, would have favored Frances as primary beneficiary. Courtney Love quickly took legal action in the wake of Cobain's death to challenge or nullify the prenuptial agreement. According to a lawsuit filed years later by Nirvana band members, quote, Love launched legal action against the estate, successfully invalidated her prenuptial agreement, and seized control over Cobain's estate from her child, end quote. In other words, Love went to probate court to invalidate or void the prenup's effect, ensuring that she, as the widow, would inherit a major portion of Cobain's assets, despite what the agreement said. By doing so, Love gained much greater control over the estate than she would have had if the prenup remained in force. Effectively, she assumed control of Cobain's legacy and finances, rather than those assets being held for baby Frances. This likely involved persuading the court that the prenuptial contract should not limit her inheritance, perhaps arguing the prenup was unconscionable or not applicable upon death, though the exact legal arguments are not made public. The outcome, however, was clear. Courtney Love became the chief heir and decision maker for Cobain's estate, while Frances Bean's share was placed in a trust for when she came of age. It's worth noting that around this time, insiders were aware of the strain in the Cobain-Love marriage, which may have influenced these events. In the weeks before Cobain's death, both spouses were contemplating divorce. Rosemary Carroll, their attorney and Frances's godmother, recounted that Courtney had asked her to find, quote, the meanest, most vicious divorce lawyer, end quote, and inquired, quote, if there was a way of voiding her prenuptial agreement, end quote, in case of a split. Cobain himself had begun drafting a new will to exclude Courtney, though he never signed it before he died. This context suggests that Love was extremely concerned about the prenup's restrictions if Kurt left her, and Cobain was serious about limiting Love's claim on his estate. When Cobain died, instead of divorcing, the prenup technically still existed, so Love's prompt legal challenge in probate can be seen as the resolution of that concern, ensuring that she was not financially cut off by the agreement. Carroll later summarized the stakes bluntly. Had a divorce occurred, Love's payout would have been minimal, but as a widow, she stood to share in an estate worth hundreds of millions, given Nirvana's future royalties. The estate proceedings and references in legal records. Court records and estate proceedings from the mid-1990s confirm the prenuptial agreement and its eventual nullification. After Cobain's death, a probate case was opened in Seattle to administer his estate. While the detailed probate filings are largely private, the broad outcome was that Courtney Love was appointed as the estate's personal representative and primary beneficiary, with Frances Bean Cobain's interests protected by a trust. In 1997, Cobain's share of Nirvana's assets was formally organized. Love, along with Nirvana members Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic, formed a limited liability company, Nirvana LLC, to manage the band's legacy. Significantly, one of the LLC's three managing partners was a Seattle attorney representing the Cobain estate on behalf of Frances's trust, reflecting that Frances did have an ownership stake, but Courtney Love still maintained effective control since she participated as the Cobain estate's decision maker. Frances's trust would later be reported as owning roughly 37% of Nirvana/Cobain assets, with the rest under Love until Frances inherited her share at 18. The existence and fate of the Cobain-Love prenup came up again in later litigation. In 2001-2002, Courtney Love became embroiled in a very public lawsuit against Grohl and Novoselic after Nirvana's unreleased material and the control of the band's catalog. As part of that case, the Nirvana bandmates' attorneys explicitly cited the prenuptial agreement. Their filings alleged that Love was trying to rewrite history and, quote, wrest away control of Nirvana, end quote, that Cobain never intended her to have given the prenup. In the course of discovery, Love was forced to produce the actual prenuptial contract in court. Attorney Kelly Kaur for Grohl and Novoselic had speculated that the prenup would prove Cobain didn't want Courtney involved in Nirvana's business after his death, though when the document was revealed, it did not contain any clause barring Love from inheriting or managing Cobain's music rights upon death. In fact, one report noted the prenup, quote, seems to say exactly the opposite of cutting her out, underscoring that its effect was limited to divorce scenarios. This legal tussle highlights that the prenuptial agreement was a key piece of evidence in understanding Cobain's intentions. Ultimately, the Nirvana lawsuit was settled in 2002, with a deal giving Love a substantial payout and recognition of Frances's future interests. By then, however, the prenup had long been moot. It had been nullified in the 1994-95 estate proceedings, and Courtney Love's rights as Cobain's widow were upheld. And in conclusion, in summary, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love did have a prenuptial agreement signed in early 1992, just before their marriage. It's publicly known that terms were designed to keep each of their assets separate and limit Courtney Love's financial claim on Cobain's wealth in the event of a divorce. After Cobain's tragic death in 1994, with no will in place, Courtney Love moved to invalidate the prenup during probate, a move that succeeded in giving her control over Cobain's estate instead of being limited. Sorry, this just goes over the whole thing again. So I've got the sources here, but when we post it, people can grab those.
So I mean, basically, what this is all saying is that if there was a divorce, she gets fuck all. But
Mm.
if he died, there was no stipulation written into anything that if he died, that she would.
Which tells me two things. One, that when he signed that, and when he died, he wasn't planning on dying. But two, that's why he knew that he had to get a will in place that
Yeah.
excluded her, because that was the only way she wasn't going to get to touch all of his stuff. I mean, there are numerous people that have said over and over and over that he was really persnickety and very territorial over his music.
Yes.
He didn't want
Yes.
her touching it. He
Yeah.
didn't want her messing with it. If it was his, it was his. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Even Danny Goldberg said that.
Now, there's something too. She tried to take money from Francis, I believe, and didn't the judge say, I've never seen anything so deplorable in my life? This
Yeah,
mother trying to stop Francis from getting um, her fair
her
share
trust.
of
Yeah,
her trust, which is again
yeah.
just phenomenally telling as to who
Well,
this person is.
not to mention the fact that she went through all of this to get control over the majority of it and then sold most of the rights
Yeah.
to his music catalog and all of that for millions of dollars to I'm blanking on the name of the company. Frick. Sorry, I've got a book right here. Um, Hal Leonard, I believe it was.
And so, as far as we can tell, she's gone through all that money too.
Hmm.
I
She's
mean,
broke at this point.
it is, he really, I think, did Rosemary fail him? Why did he not get a chance to get
My
that
understanding
will?
is my understanding is that she drew it up, had it ready, and he just hadn't had a chance to get to her office to sign it.
And like you said, he didn't think he was going to die in 8 days, or however long that
Yeah,
period was from when he spoke to Rosemary and asked that, and
because
then died.
he called her first on March 1st. That's when the conversation first happened between the two of them, and then he called her right when he got back from Rome.
Okay,
So right around March 12th, and they talked about it again. That's when he like doubled down that he wanted her removed from the will.
so about three
And
weeks later, he was gone.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So, again, the point going that I think going back to the Reddit thread, just saying like, well, there was no point in Courtney doing that. I think you've done an exceptional job proving, there was a 450 million reasons for her to do that. And,
mm,
that's just an estimate. I mean, I think in perpetuity, obviously Nirvana, um, is probably worth a lot more than that. But
oh
yeah,
yeah.
so again, I don't understand where they like, do they not do their research and that they just post stuff and try to sound like they know what they're talking about so people will just
Uh,
believe them?
I think
Because we
so, and
post sources. Like you're
yeah,
reading, we post our sources. We're not just coming
yeah,
up with
and
this stuff out
I
of
mean,
nowhere.
I literally have for that whole thing that I just read. There's a chunk of sources stated at the bottom.
Yep.
For example, the Los Angeles Times, the Seattle Post Intelligencer. Like there's not. It's not like www dot
Yeah.
whatever dot com,
Yes, exactly.
somebody's
Someone wrote a
blog or
blog.
whatever.
Yeah, there's a Tumblr that says that there was no prenup. So obviously,
Duh,
um,
guys, that's how it works.
now, this is one of my favorites, and by favorites, I mean get fucked. Kurt's lyrics were dark, and
Mm,
so it's obvious he killed himself. Now, I think he talks about, look on the bright side, suicide. There's that
mm,
lyric. I don't know. Are there any other lyrics where he actually even uses the word suicide?
mm.
I don't believe there are.
Not
I
that,
think it's
not, I'll
just.
say not that come to mind. No.
How many Green
Um.
Day songs have I sent you about suicide? Like at
Oh my
least
God,
six,
numerous.
right?
The one that I always think of is not Green Day, but it's Hollywood Undead. They've literally got one about I'm sitting here drinking a bottle, getting ready to jump.
Right, right.
And none of those guys are dead.
No. And I mean, we've talked about Blink 182, we've talked about all of that, but it is
Yeah.
so, this is not how evidence works, guys. This
No.
claim is simply built on emotional projection. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, well, look, all the pictures of him, he looks so sad. There are pictures of him holding a gun. And of course, there's
Did
the
you
big
look at the
joke.
whole spread that they took that day? Like the
Yes.
entire, because I
There are
guarantee you there's
42
some
where he's
smiling.
laughing and two where he's just like morose,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so again, like, don't think that um what his life was like, or simply because he looks like he has sad eyes, that he was, the actuality of somebody committing suicide. There's like, I mean, obviously nature versus nurture, but I know I think they've discovered a suicide drive, etc. And there is not a shred of proof that Kurt ever tried to do that before, that there's any familial reason to believe that it's genetic. We don't
Yeah.
even know if it is genetic, but even the people who said, like, oh, well, so and so and his family did, or so and so did this, that's not even true. So,
Yeah.
but going back to just like lyrics or dark, and of course, there's always the joke, haha, he said, I don't have a gun. And then there's like that.
That
It's,
one
oh
just
my
gets on my
God.
nerves. Like the
It's like,
original.
it's not even funny. And it's like
Yeah.
Tang and astronauts. Like, just go away. So, let's look at, we have some numbers here that I want to share with you. So,
Mm.
again, it's a claim based on emotional projection, not forensic or um, fact. Let's break it down with stats. Most artists who write about suicide do not kill themselves. Let's look at
Mm.
actual numbers. In a 2019 study on suicide risk in musicians, researchers found that while musicians do have a higher suicide rate than the general population, it's still a tiny percentage overall, estimated at around 0.27%. There is no statistical correlation between writing dark or angsty lyrics and actual suicide. Think about artists like Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, Fiona Apple, Elliott Smith, who did die young, but again, likely by homicide, not suicide, though that is not a case I'm going to get into, but I think that
Mm-mm.
most people out there know that he
Yeah.
didn't stab himself. So we just won't go there. Even the Beatles talk about not being able to go on, right? I mean, that's sort of lover's lament.
I
I
think that's a
can't.
human feeling. I think we all have really bad days where we have thoughts that are like, oh my gosh, this is so awful.
Yeah.
But how many people of those people actually wind up carrying that out or
Oh my
doing anything?
gosh.
Or does it develop into anything more than, I can't take this for much longer? This really sucks.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
we all get to our wits' end. We all have our limits. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean. And I would also like to point out that music is art, and art
Yes,
is a really great way to work through some of those really dark feelings.
absolutely. And I mean, Kurt's lyrics, they were surreal. A lot of times ironic. They were, joking, or pieces of, like you said, art or poetry, things in
Hmm.
his journals. Lots of them are misunderstood.
Oh
There
yeah,
is no universe where Kurt, I mean, we've heard him say the exact opposite numerous times. I'm not a death rocker.
no.
He said
I mean,
lots of that.
the one that makes me the most angry is the "I hate myself and I want to die," because
Oh my
just
gosh.
months before he died, he was asked by Rolling Stone, "How seriously did you mean that?" And he literally said, "As literal as a joke can be."
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a joke. He
Yeah.
was poking fun at himself and at the image and how he was perceived by people.
Totally. Oh my gosh. And like, um, he couldn't have known that people were gonna, I mean, I guess he kind of did. They were taking him very seriously, but um, every single interview he ever did, he was joking, like
Mm,
with a twist of lemon. I mean, everything he's doing is to just be a little dork. And so
yeah.
it's amazing to me that people, wow, they just wanted him to be something that he was not, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. He had a really dark, weird sense of humor.
Hmm.
And that was just how he was. It doesn't mean he wanted to end everything.
Yeah, exactly. And if I had a shirt that said that, like, I think Billy Joe from Green Day used to have a baseball shirt that said stupid, and it was misspelled, and it had an arrow pointing up to his head. He wore it at Woodstock or Lollapalooza, I forgot. So when I saw Green Day in 94, I made my own shirt and like pointed up to my face. And guess what, Rachel? I don't actually
What?
think I'm stupid. I know it's shocking.
Really? Oh my
I
gosh.
know. That's what we did back then, you know? I really wish I had a picture in that shirt. But
I wish you
it's,
did too.
you know, it's just we were all fucking around. You know, we were all
It's
just
that Gen
joking.
X thing.
It's the Gen
Yeah.
X thing, you know. So I wish people would, and I don't know if most Gen Xers already get that. They're like, oh, come on, we're always like, you know, we're always doing that.
Yeah.
If people looked at our text together, they would think I was a mass murderer, like a serial killer, because I'm like, Rachel, I'm gonna like blah blah blah, or you know, and then
Genuinely.
you're like, I'll hand you the match, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Let's burn them down, babe. Let's do it.
Exactly. You know, like this is how we cope as human beings, you
Yeah.
know?
You make jokes and you laugh it off.
Exactly. And it is so sad to me that people took that and twisted it and that
Yeah.
this is and you know what? I don't care if he called someone that day and said, "Listen, I can't take this anymore. I'm out."
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't. He
No.
did forensically. I don't care what you think of his lyrics. I don't care if you think he had sad eyes. I don't care what you think. He did not take his own life, period. And
And I also just have to say, I don't get the sad eyes thing. I have never in my life
yeah.
looked at him and been like, oh, his eyes are so sad.
Yes, I know. I mean,
Annoyed. Yeah, he kind of had a resting bitch face thing going on, but
yes.
I don't get the sad thing.
Yeah,
No.
no, I agree. And you know, I think most people have read his journals. Some people haven't. I know you didn't, and I didn't, you know, until we started working on this case. But,
Yeah.
you know, looking in his journals, I don't see anything about seriously ever wanting to take his own life. There's art pieces in there, short stories like and if you guys haven't watched our videos about Montage of Heck, please do, because we talk
Our
about that
channels.
there.
Yeah.
Yes. But you know, he was angry, he was alienated. I think as a sensitive person, I mean, you probably get that too, where you're like, I don't understand why I can't get along with people. Like,
Hmm.
why do I feel like an outsider? Why do I say
Why am I so
yes?
different from most people? Yeah.
What is wrong with me that I can't just, you know, just not take things so seriously?
I
And
spent all of my teens and early 20s feeling that way. So
yeah.
trust me, yeah.
And I
That's
think most people who identify with Kurt, I think probably understand that because they see that in Kurt is
yeah.
something that they see in themselves, this kind of outsider mentality or being so sensitive that if somebody, you know, says something shitty to you, you don't just, you know, laugh it off and go back to whatever the next day. Like, yeah,
You
but
know
that
how
doesn't mean
long it took me to master that? Like
have you?
I'm
Can you teach me? I haven't
I
figured it
can
out yet.
try. I mean, I've not fully mastered it.
Yeah.
Like, don't let me kid you there. But it doesn't, ruin my entire week like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
Maybe an hour or two and I'm right back to being good.
Yeah. Well, that's
Um,
true.
but it took me a couple years of like daily work. Well, no, maybe
Yeah.
it's more like 3 years now of daily work and trying to shut down that negative self-talk and all like it takes a conscious effort and daily work, but you can do it. But most people just are so used to that being there and they just go with it. And it's so hard to turn it off and reverse it that most people just don't.
Well, imagine being Kurt too. I mean, being a
Mhm.
woman is one thing, but being a man who grew up in Aberdeen and then, you know, should having the same
Just
sort
tough
of
it out.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't imagine how difficult that must have been. And so yeah, I think he was dealing with a lot of shit that he was trying to sort out, but never there is nothing that has ever led me to believe that, you know, there's an auction up right now, and I think I sent it to you, and it's something that Kurt wrote and it says something about mentions suicide, and you and I read
Mm,
it and we're like, what? No, like as
yeah.
if that's a selling point.
Yeah.
And there is no
No,
mention of
it's
suicide. It's just a little like art
no.
piece that he wrote at some
It's
point,
like
but
a
it's
poem,
like
yeah.
yeah, and it's nothing, but it's like wow, really, we're doing that, we're trying
It's like
to
they wanna
sell this
insert it
shit.
in every
Yeah,
piece where he's ever mentioned, they feel like they have to say that, and it's like, he's an entire person separate, like, even if that had been how he died, he's an entire person
yeah,
separate from his cause of death.
yeah, exactly. But no one's ever, you know, no one's ever, I think, let uh, Courtney, of course, being the first and foremost, has ever let anyone forget what the narrative is, and
Mm-mm.
you know, so let's just again, talk about if they want to use emotional projection to say he was wanting to end his life, then, we can just add, of course, we added the facts, but then let's also talk about, people saying he was spiraling when he was actually, working on getting a divorce, going to rehab, trying
Uh,
to I think he wanted to do some solo work. He
he
had
did.
plans.
He made plans with his grandpa. He made plans with his father.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody that saw him at Exodus, the staff and the visitors that he had, all said how great he was doing, how great he looked. Joe Mama Nitzberg literally said, I was ready to see him looking like shit and depressed, and he looked so fucking great. Jackie Ferry said how happy and how great he looked and how wonderful it was to see him with Francis
Mm-hmm.
and what a great time they had together. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a single person that saw him in
Not
that
even
final
Dylan.
time. No.
Even
Even
Dylan
Dylan
said, yeah, yeah,
literally told Tom Grant
yeah,
that he's got a lot on his plate that he's dealing with right now, but he's actually handling it really well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so the last few things that we want to talk about is them. The last thing they said is, well, the autopsy and the crime scene prove, they match him taking his own life. So again, we've got no fingerprints on the gun, none on the shell. So I'm not sure how he loaded it. The pen, the paper, the shell. If you've watched our ballistics videos, and if you haven't, please do. Those are absolutely next level.
Top notch. Yep.
Yeah. The Not only is the shell on the wrong side, the shell never should have ejected at all.
No,
Kurt's hand was found wrapped around the barrel. If your hand is on the barrel of that gun, it will not eject a shell,
it will not.
period. So
Yeah.
that shell is there magically. So no, it does not confirm someone taking their own life.
No.
And then also, the angle of the gunshot. So we know that Kurt, being supine, he would have had to hold the gun about, a foot or so above his chest to get that trajectory. And you're talking about someone who has done so much or been given so much heroin that
He wouldn't have even been able to balance it above himself like
no,
that. Like
no,
lift it, nothing.
yeah, exactly. And then of course there's the suicide note. Everybody who has eyes can tell that those last four lines were not written by the same person who wrote the top. And we have, I think we have enough, a lot of evidence to show that that's a forgery.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what we're talking about here, so we have physical evidence. We're not talking about vibes, not like, well, Kurt looks sad, so I'm pretty sure he
Yeah.
did it.
It's
We're
like these are
talking
not our
about,
opinions. Yeah,
no,
like this is facts from experts from, experiments and testing and these are the results. This is what has been found by experts, by doctors and by ballistics experts and it's it boggles my mind that
So I asked the Reddit guy, because they have a few, when he was talking to me about not doxing him.
Hmm,
I asked him, so what happens when the case gets reopened? What are you going to do? Are
hmm.
you going to allow people to talk about it? No, they're not. He said it's not simply his decision, but that they will still not allow people to discuss it in the Nirvana group. Now, I could see them saying, we will not allow any discussion of Kurt's death. That's not what this is for. Let's celebrate his life. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But to have a subreddit where you are telling people that this narrative is true, posting, your emotional projections as to why it is true without allowing any rebuttal or evidence or facts to be posted, and then,
What happened to freedom of speech?
that's not Reddit.
No, I
I
know, and
have
it's
no idea,
annoying.
but it's
Yeah.
the worst. And I think that we're very lucky that most of our people, we do have people who have come over from Reddit, most people in our Facebook group. And if you're not a part of it, please do join because we have
Yeah.
some really great discussions over there. And, but most people who have ever tried to post on Reddit have been like, yeah, I don't, I want nothing to do with that. They've all been
No.
banned. You're not allowed to ask a question. You're not allowed to even
No.
make a respectful comment or any sort of rebuttal. And in 3
And
weeks,
it's not even just like he literally will reply and laugh at you.
Oh,
He will like
he's
bully you and call you names and
yeah,
laugh at you
yeah. And
for thinking for yourself and
yeah.
not following along with their scripted narrative that you have to follow to the T.
And I don't go into his backyard. Like I said, I've never posted on Reddit in my life, not in that Reddit. I've posted on some dog
No.
Reddits, but I have never posted on the Nirvana Reddit
Mm-mm.
in my life. But I will say that he has come into our sandbox, into our playground. He came onto YouTube and called me some of the vilest shit you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But once, I forget if it was you or Beverly, somebody figured out who he was. And I
Mm.
said, thanks. And I used his name. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was like, hey, let's detente. Let's.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. We can work this out.
So you like to
Mm.
bully women on the internet, but when we find out who you are, you
Suddenly you
are all willing to be
surrender.
reasonable. Yeah.
Mm.
And so, it's all I can say to people is don't ever bother going there. It's not worth your time. And at some point, if one of our members or wants to make a Reddit, if we think that's important, we already have our Patreon, our YouTube, our Facebook group. If and hopefully those people on Reddit who are curious, and I think it's funny because I go, we're not doing this on vibes, but at the same time you and I think do run a lot on vibes, and then we go, well, there's something wrong here. So you're looking at the scene, the angle where you can see Kurt's feet, and
Mm.
it's going in the greenhouse windows,
Yeah.
and you're going, there's something wrong here, what is it? And then it's like one of those pictures where it's like spot the differences.
Mm.
And you're like, this does not look like a real crime scene. And then you're going, okay, well, the case is too far, or the kit is too far. You can't reach it. His shoelaces are
Look
tied.
weird.
They look weird. They're very pristine. They're not like Kurt
Mm.
would have tied them. So
No.
we don't think Kurt tied his own shoelaces. So there are these things that you go by on vibe, and then you go, okay, now let's like get somebody to actually check the forensics. Now those things
Yeah.
we can't. No one's going to tell us whether or not. I think we did ask Joe if Kurt was wearing sneakers that night, and he said he was. But again, it's 31 years. I don't know if I wouldn't
Yeah.
remember. I don't remember if I was wearing sneakers yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
even
I
know.
want to say
So,
Joe said that he normally wore his shoes in the house. I want to say it's
yes.
what Joe said.
Yeah, exactly. And so, a lot of these things, unfortunately, like something like sneakers, we can't check forensically. But when you're looking at how the gun, you're reading the Seattle police reports, and you're seeing how it's saying the gun was found, and then you're going, okay, well, like the vibe check is off. But
Mm-hmm.
now we're not just going to say, well, hey, the vibes are off, guys.
Yeah.
So I don't think he did
So
it.
that's what this
So
means. Yeah. No.
exactly. And then we actually go in and make sure we can provide as much evidence as we can. And for those few things, like again, just looking at his shoelaces, you go, somebody else tied those. So when you look at his shoelaces, they're close to one side of the shoe. They're not tied in the middle. Like somebody put the shoes on him and tied it from the side.
Yeah.
Because they're closer to the side that they would have tied them on. Well, we can't prove that, and that's just it's just
It's
an interesting
speculation.
tidbit.
And yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like that's stuff like that we'll notice and that bugs us that we'll bring up in conversation and we'll discuss. But it's not something we'll ever present as this is one of the reasons why we know he didn't do it.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
That's all like documented with facts and science and forensics and et cetera, to back it
Yeah.
up. Otherwise, we don't state it as a fact if it's not.
Exactly. It's an interesting piece of conversation. The fact that his
Yeah.
watch stopped, or he didn't. Did the watch stop, or did he just not set it ahead for daylight savings time?
I want to say he didn't set it ahead.
Right. Okay. So that's why that's one of the reasons they think he passed on the 3rd, I think, was daylight savings
so.
time. But again, you're talking about somebody who probably, he doesn't have a lot planned. He's
No,
not
and he
trying
usually would
to.
wear the same clothes for days on end. He's not the
Exactly,
type of
yeah.
person to like, oh, time to change my watch.
Exactly. That's right. So, I mean, if even now it's like, our watches, our phones, they all change. But like the
Yeah.
car, I'm just like, oh, 4 days later,
Dude,
I might change it. It's just like
mine usually just stays the same until it changes back. Are you kidding me?
exactly.
I'm just like, oh wait,
So,
no, it's an hour different.
yeah, exactly. I know. So you're like, yeah, I can do the math,
Yeah.
but yeah. So again, so just like the TLDR, except you're here, so you have watched the whole thing, and we thank you so much. Is
Absolutely.
that the Nirvana subreddits are run by assholes and people who won't And yes, I am stating that as a fact because somebody
Mm,
who will not let you argue the evidence has a real problem and some kind of narrative to put forward. Like we've always said, anyone who wants to come on and talk to us about this,
yeah,
happy to do it. You want to talk
always
to us in the
happy to.
comments? Please at least try to be reasonably kind because, we get a lot of trolls. So if
Yeah.
it's just something mean, we'll usually just delete it because we all have our limits. But, if you really want to talk about the evidence, we're in.
Yeah, if you come at
So
us respectfully and, we're always happy to discuss and go back and forth
absolutely.
and see why you think what you think or what evidence you have to present. Um, all we're looking for is the truth. That's it.
Yeah.
Um,
And as we've said,
so,
we know that the Washington State Lab, the SPD, they have evidence that we do not have, and
mhm,
so we're going, okay, so you guys need to reopen this and look at it because you have access to things we don't have. Prove to
yeah.
us that his death was not a homicide. Fine, you
Do an
know.
actual unbiased investigation.
Yes, exactly.
Do like the real deal that was not done the first time around.
Yeah,
Actually investigate it and determine once and for all, based on the evidence. That's
exactly.
all we want.
Yeah, and we can put it all to bed. I mean, I think that
Mhm,
it's sort of too far gone to ever. I think they're never going to be able to prove that his death was not a homicide, but they should try.
mhm.
But I mean, that's again, they have the evidence that we legally will never be able to, to see or to get.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah. So I think hopefully we have gone through all the Reddit stuff. If anybody has any points that we missed, of course, we're happy to speak to that. So don't forget to share the video, like, subscribe, all that lovely stuff,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
we will talk to you all very soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.